Welcome to the CondoVultures.com podcast with your host, Peter Zalewski, a Miami real estate broker, Wall Street consultant, and expert witness. This podcast is focused on identifying real estate buying opportunities in the South Florida condo market of Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. The CondoVultures.com podcast is not authorized by the South Florida real estate industry and will most likely annoy many of the region's talking heads. This podcast will feature straight talk and salty language that could be offensive to some. Please remember that past investment success does not determine future gains, especially in South Florida's volatile condo market. For more information, please visit CondoVultures.com. Don't buy a South Florida condo, discounted or distressed, before taking a Condo Vultures correction tour. CondoVultures.com offers weekly bus and walking tours that focus on educating buyers on the how-tos of identifying discounted condos, analyzing the opportunities, and purchasing units. Every tour attendee receives a list of all condo projects in a particular market, a market assessment handout, and unmatched expert analysis. For more information on the condo correction tours, please visit condovultures.eventbrite.com.
This is Peter Zalewski of the Condo Vultures podcast. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. And I wanted to alert you that if you have a property that you're looking to sell in the Tri-County, South Florida area, I would encourage you to reach out to Jenny Cortez, a licensed real estate broker with cvrrealty.com. She's my partner. She's been in the business for north of 15 years. More importantly, she knows the market. She knows how to get a deal done. And she also realizes that it's more important to get a price that you can accept and sell the property rather than to hold firm on some price that's never going to be achieved and ultimately languish on the market. So if you're looking to do a deal that you want a skilled expert who can help you sell a property, reach out to Jenny Cortez at 305-865-5859, 305-865-5859, or visit her website, cvrrealty.com.
Welcome to Miami Reporters Roundtable. I'm your host, Peter Zalewski from Condo Vultures. If you're tuning into this podcast, you're going to hear a conversation by current and former journalists talking about some of the biggest stories that have occurred within the last week. We're going to try to cut through some of the hyperbole in the marketplace and give you, the audience, an idea of what is really going on. Before we get started, let me throw out a couple things to you. This is our fourth season. As a result of it being our fourth season, we're trying to get a little bit more modern. Now, if you want to reach out to us, you can get us on Twitter, or you can get us on Instagram, or even TikTok. The handle is Miami RRP. Miami RRP. What does that stand for? It's Miami Reporters Roundtable Podcast. It's not AARP. It's Miami RRP. Some of the people on the podcast are a little bit older. I do not qualify for ARP, but I'm going to let them discuss it if they want. So anyways, if you want to get us, Miami RRP will be our handle on Twitter, on Instagram, as well as on TikTok. Yes, we're doing TikTok. So what's going to go on in the podcast? I handpick 6 stories. I send them off to the journalists. I'm going to ask them to discuss them. If any other journalists want to chime in along the way, they're free to go ahead and do so. So let me get started and introduce our roundtable this particular week. We're going to start off with a gentleman who was a reporter for over 25 years. Now he has his own marketing and public relations firm. It's called Gruss Communications, and it's no one else but Jean Gruss. If you want to get a hold of Jean, you can get him on Twitter at Jean Gruss, JeanGruss. What's going on, Mr. Gruss?
Hey, it's great to be back on the Unauthorized podcast, Peter.
It is unauthorized, and we appreciate having you on the podcast. You always bring some value to the podcast for our audience. Who else do we have on the podcast? We have somebody who's been a journalist for nearly a decade. Right now, she's residential bureau chief in Miami for The Real Deal. It's no one else but Katherine Kallergis. If you want to get a hold of Katherine, you can get her on Twitter at Kallergis. That's Kallergis. Did I get it right, Katherine?
You got it right, yeah.
Oh, nailed it. What's going on, Katherine? How you been?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you. How was your summer break? And are you excited for season 4?
This is what I've been waiting for months.
Katherine, this is probably a good time to tell you what we've done now is trying to modernize. We're actually selling merchandise. So people can buy t-shirts, they can buy flip-flops, they can buy shower curtains, they can buy welcome mats. And much like Marvel is able to sell products featuring each of its superheroes, we're also doing the same thing. So, a perfect example, what we have on the market right now is you can buy a shower curtain. So the first thing in the morning, you see Mr. Fakler, John Fakler, who's one of our Roundtable members. You can see him, but if any of our audience wants to buy anything, they're going to have an opportunity to buy all of our superheroes. And hopefully, Katherine, you're going to agree, and we will be selling t-shirts. We will be selling coffee mugs, and they can all get a great shot of you, and they can have it on their desk while they're doing the remote work. So we'll discuss that later. By the way, if anybody in the audience does want to order anything, simply go to condovultures.creator-spring.com, condovultures-creator-spring.com. I'll put a link in the description of the podcast. How do you spell creator-spring? It's CREATOR hyphen. That's that line in the middle, and that's spring, like I can't wait for spring.com. So, Katherine, glad to have you. And then finally, let me introduce our fourth member of the podcast. That's a gentleman who was a journalist for over 20 years. Right now, he does public relations and consulting. No one else but John Fakler. If you want to get a hold of John on Twitter, he looks at it. He doesn't really post a lot, but you can get him at JT Fakler, Fakler. What's going on, Mr. Fakler?
Not too much, Peter. I'm thrilled to be back this week. I also would like to give a plug to Jean Gruss. His Twitter handle is at Jean Gruss, Gruss, because you didn't mention it before. I caught that.
I think I mentioned it. John, did I mention it?
You did mention it, but I appreciate the double mention. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
And what about some love for Katherine, Mr. Fakler? Did she perturb you or something? You're forgetting her?
You already mentioned it. I thought you didn't mention Jean. So I guess I didn't hear it.
Okay. Well, sometimes when you have those big Italian lunches, the carbs kick in and you don't really think clearly. Hopefully, though, you're going to be up by the time we go to our first story with you.
Yeah, okay.
So, as part of season 4, we're moving a little bit different direction with our advertising. We're not breaking up the podcast to run some ads. We're simply going to have one sponsor. So let me introduce our sponsor. Then we're going to go ahead and get to our story. Who's a sponsor? It's no one else but myself. It's CondoVulturesRealty.com, CondoVulturesRealty.com. We do brokerage services, and we also do consulting. If anybody needs expert witness work, I've been approved for federal as well as circuit court. So if you have any questions and you need information, you need consulting, you need brokerage services, reach out to someone at my firm. You can get them at CondoVulturesRealty.com. So that being said, let's go ahead. We'll get into our first of 6 stories that we're going to be discussing. Mr. Fakler, we're going to start off with you with story number 1. You are somebody who has gone to a Messi game. You saw Lionel Messi and Inter Miami. Anybody who doesn't know, Lionel Messi won the World Cup last year. He is a soccer legend out of Argentina. He signed this summer to play for Inter Miami, which is the Major League Soccer team down here in Miami, as well as the United States. So you're sort of our Messi expert and our Inter Miami expert. So Mr. Fakler, we'll go to you with the first story. This is going to be coming out of a publication in the United Kingdom called The Mirror. And let me read you the headline, first couple graphs, and I want to get your opinion on it. So here we go, Mr. Fakler. Lionel Messi signing impact laid bare as Inter Miami Inc. rare MLS contract. Subhead: the Argentine superstar has taken to life in the U.S. on the pitch, and it would seem that his new MLS employers are reaping the rewards through commercial deals due to his star power. First couple graphs, Mr. Fakler. Lionel Messi has made a swashbuckling start to life at Inter Miami on the pitch, but it appears as if his arrival stateside is paying dividends off too for his new club. The Argentine superstar has supplied the goods for his new employer since his move to South Beach, living up to his billing as a staggering 7 strikes in 4 outings. The 7-time Ballon d'Or, and I know I've got that wrong, has already helped the Herons to start, and Herons is the name of the Inter Miami team, to turn around their fortunes with his form having proved the catalyst that runs the League's Cup quarterfinals. So at the time of recording this podcast, the Inter Miami is actually in the semifinals. So here we go. Another couple graphs, Mr. Fakler. Given the 36-year-old's worldwide renown, it is perhaps only to be expected that his presence stateside will result in extra commercial exposure to his new team as well. Now it seems the unprecedented mania surrounding Messi's move to the U.S. has even made the fashion industry sit up and take notice. The Floridian franchise has announced that they've struck a deal with the Japanese designer brand BAPE, B-A-P-E, and we had a conversation to try to see exactly how to say it because Mr. Fakler and myself, we didn't necessarily know it. John and Katherine, they may have known it, But anyways, BAPE, otherwise known as A Bathing Ape. This will mean that enthusiasts from around the globe can purchase a unique piece of Inter Miami merchandise, which will include pullover hoodies, t-shirts, sweatshirts, and caps. Mr. Fakler, what do you make of the fact that this fashion brand out of Japan basically has agreed to issue a product with the Inter Miami brand? And as we all know, some of the brands coming out of Japan as well as South Korea, they tend to just be a sensation, especially in a demographic that might be a little bit different than yours, Mr. Fakler. So what say you?
Well, apparently, Messi Mania is a real deal because several interesting nuggets in this story. I don't know if people know that his when he first joined, his jersey sold out in 24 hours, which beats LeBron James, Tom Brady, and Ronaldo in speed of how quickly the jerseys. He actually has the record for how fast his jersey sold out. Now, they're not going to be available until October. This deal is also interesting because the MLS has a league-wide deal with Adidas, but it's one of the only, if it may be the only, fashion deal outside of it, Adidas, in the entire league, which makes it really special. This particular company, this fashion brand out of Tokyo, has locations all over the world: China, Taiwan. They're in Miami. They're in New York City, and these MLS jerseys, the Inter Miami jerseys, will be available at all of these stores. I don't think there's an MLS team out there that can claim the same thing. So, they're really capitalizing on this Messi Mania. The chairman and largest shareholder, Jorge Mas, by the way, I used to cover them as a public company when I was a reporter. One of the largest construction and infrastructure engineering companies in the world, $10 billion a year company. The guy's got some serious muscle. He's got some serious money behind this, and he can go out there and do what he wants, really, and promote this brand, put his own money behind it, and really, make this something special. I don't know how long it's going to last. I know John had some questions last week about how long would this Messi Mania last? Will it be just a flash in the pan? But if they can get this thing going, it could be a long-term financial deal. Moss is claiming that he's going to double revenues by next year for the club.
So, Mr. Fakler, as much as you want to talk about Jorge Mas, I would point to David Beckham. David Beckham has an eye for fashion. He prides himself on how he looks. His wife, a former Spice Girl. So my question to you, Mr. Fakler, is A, when you go to matches to see Messi, what do you wear? And B, now that the fact that BAPE has signed off and this Japanese fashion brand is going to be widespread, and I will say it's quite dear, quite rich with price start for some of their fashion. I'm wondering, is an Inter Miami match going to turn into a runway for the highest of fashion? So again, Mr. Fakler, what do you wear when you go to the matches? And two, how will you change what you wear given the fact that BAPE is now signed off and will be selling a product with Inter Miami brand on it?
Well, I think that's a great point about Beckham. And obviously his Spice Girl wife is involved with this on the fashion side. But as far as I'm concerned, I wear the warmest, coolest clothes I could possibly wear. That includes shorts, a t-shirt. I can tell you the last game I went to, I did not wear the colors, and I got almost thrown out of the stadium because I was supposed to sit with the club, and they wouldn't let you sit there unless you had the colors on. The colors, the Inter Miami colors. And even though I paid for a ticket, I had to sit outside the club area just because I didn't have the colors on. Crazy about that stuff. So
just imagine what's coming now with BAPE signing off. Okay, story number 2. John, we're going to go to you with story number 2. This is coming out of Housing Wire. And so just so everybody's clear, when you try to sell real estate, residential real estate in the United States, typically what will happen is somebody will go to a realtor, somebody with a real estate license. They join a club called the Realtor Association. There tends to be local realtor associations, and then they all answer to a national association or so. And typically when you go to list a property or you go to try to find a property, those properties that are listed with a realtor, and what do you need to do in order to list a property with a realtor? Well, basically you got to sign a commission agreement. So commission is going to be offered. Anytime anything is in the multiple listing service or the MLS, a commission is going to be offered. So that is the big picture. Now, let me get into the headline in the first couple of graphs, Sean, and I'll have you sort of provide some comments. So this is coming out of Housing Wire. And headline, real estate agents grapple with cyber attack on Rapatoni. Now, Rapatoni is simply a type of multiple listing service that exists out on the West Coast, but the MLS basically exists nationwide in the United States. So here's the subhead. The FBI is investigating the attack. First couple graphs, Sean. A ransomware attack has crippled Rapatoni, a Southern California data host for property listing information. Santa Rosa-based Bay Area Real Estate Information Services, known as BAPE, and other MLSs who are clients of Rapatoni fell victim of the cyber attack. This form of cyber crime encrypts the victim's data and demands a ransom for its release. The incident left agents from all across the country scrambling for workarounds to navigate the disruption to their marketing and property sales efforts, the North Bay Business Journal first reported. As a result, some agents around the country are unable to add new property listings, make price adjustments, or even access the latest property information for showings, reported the outlet. It's also been challenging for agents to keep track of sold properties since the attack as their local MLS system has been out. John, the MLS is basically how people trade houses the easy way. Now, this excludes We Buy Ugly House types, those signs on the side of the highway. It also excludes for sale by owner. So a lot of people go the MLS route. If hackers are able to take that down, can't they basically shut down the entire resale residential real estate market in the United States? What do you make of that? And what do you think could be the solution going forward other than better protection on behalf of the MLS companies?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, if you're going to sell a house, the number one reason you would hire a realtor is to have access to this multiple listing service database, which is basically a monopoly for our realtors. I mean, nobody else has access to it unless you're a realtor, and that's how they make a living, is basically putting these properties on the multiple listing service for other realtors to bring clients and to split the commission. So basically, that's what it's all about. I mean, otherwise, why would you hire a realtor? So it just goes to show that multiple listing service is really at the heart of the real estate business, residential resale business. So if it goes down, obviously that's a huge problem. So, quite frankly, I mean, the realtors that I've been, I did a little research on this story, and realtors are basically doing workarounds. I mean, the smart realtors have their own information and their own way of reaching out and contacting other realtors for listings. And, it's just, they're going to have to work around it. The more serious thing is the hacking. And obviously so many industries have been the victims of hackers that, it's just a fact of life now. So really, everybody needs to have a plan B. So this is actually, maybe a good reminder that, hey, guess what? Technology can fail. And, what are you going to do if that happens and you need a plan B? Now, there are other services, there's realtor.com, there's Zillow, but I think, as you told me earlier, Peter, Zillow may rely quite a bit on MLS data for their information. So it may not be as accurate, but certainly there's going to be a lot of discussion and some competitors popping up, and there's going to be a lot more attention to data and control of information, and certainly a lot more security. And I think that's good, actually. But in the meantime, it's going to be a real pain in the butt.
Well, and here's the kicker, John. Members of the Realtor Association, they are prohibited from having what's called a pocket listing. That means if somebody decides they want to sell their property with you, that realtor, under the rules of engagement, they're required to put it in the multiple listing and not keep it on the side for themselves. So think about what kinds of dynamics this creates with a hacker coming in and being able to shut it down.
Yeah, but come on. Every realtor has pocket listings. Come on, man.
In Miami? No way.
I mean, everybody's got pocket listings. Come on. I mean, that
is a journalist in you. The journalist in you.
There you go.
Now, segueing over to Katherine, who has story number 3. Let me just remind the audience. And you remember season 3, we actually we discussed a story. Katherine, you might have even written it about a realtor who also was an OnlyFans star who got hacked and ended up losing a lot of her fans on Instagram as well as OnlyFans, unless she paid off some sort of ransom in order to get her access back. So I can just imagine where we're going forward. So Katherine, before we get into your story, do you want to comment? Do you remember anything about that OnlyFans realtor hack that occurred where the realtor basically got locked out?
Yeah, unfortunately, that wasn't me writing that story.
Yeah. I remember the story. Wasn't
Yeah, but
Katherine.
you edited it though, I'm sure.
But I will say, I feel like realtors also especially probably need to check up on their passwords. You know what I mean? Like, just improve your maybe the MLS. Maybe you need a 2-step verification. I'm not sure. But yeah, I agree with John. Like, I think that it's probably a good reminder, and since it was kind of isolated to California, and some MLSs around the country, right?
There were press reports, and the story was breaking today, the day we're recording this, which is actually Tuesday. But there were articles coming out of places like in the Midwest as well, like Cincinnati, who are also affected by it. Yep.
Yeah. I will say too, like, a small consolation is that this didn't happen when the market was really hot. And people can still pick up the phone and call the agent. I'm assuming the listings are still on the realtor.coms and the Zillows. So they can't update information, which is bad, but at least, at the end of the day, you do have to talk to the broker to get something done. So
correct. Great point. Katherine, we're going to go to you on story number 3. You actually wrote it. This is in The Real Deal. And let me read you the headline. I'll read you the first couple graphs, and I want you to provide some insight. You might not be able to provide an opinion, but you can provide some insight into the story. So here we go. Headline: Resi brokerages claw their way out of a slow market. Subhead: Q2 earnings show cost cutting is paying off, but challenges remain. First couple graphs. Do you hear it too? Is it the sound of optimism? Residential brokerages appear to be digging the way out of the slow market with varying degrees of success, in some case beating analysts' expectations in the second quarter. Compass, Douglas Elliman, Anywhere Real Estate, which is parent to Corcoran, Coldwell Banker, Century 21, Sotheby's International Realty, and even Zillow suggested that they have all started to turn the corner after a tough 12 months, that including slashing costs by hundreds of millions of dollars. Zillow CEO Rich Barton said the company was pleased with their accomplishments so far, despite reporting more losses for the second consecutive quarter. Katherine, we all know that real estate prices are increasingly high, although the volume has basically fallen off quite considerably. There's not a lot of supply there. I recently pulled some numbers for Q2, and we're still in a seller's market in South Florida where it's based on months of supply. 6 months is typically equilibrium. There's less than 6 months of supply out there. So how are these brokerages going to increase their revenue? And these are all publicly traded. Increase their revenue while you're not doing as much volume.
I mean, I think a lot of companies, and this has been happening for years, you could probably attest to this, they've been adding services. So even locally, brokerages are adding other lines of business to kind of make up for that. It is like a business where the margins continue to shrink. So they have to do that. I do think there's still struggles ahead, obviously, like the market is going to continue to be slow. And the second quarter is typically the most profitable, I think. So I'm curious to see kind of what happens for the rest of the year. But it was interesting because it was so bad. It's been so bad. So it was interesting to kind of see that common thread on the earnings calls, among the brokerage heads, that they think that they've kind of, the worst is in the rearview mirror. But also, at the end of the day, it's a cyclical, it's a cycle. You've been tracking it. So did we hit rock bottom? I mean, what do you think?
I'm waiting for the impact of higher insurance prices, higher property valuations, i.e. property taxes, as well as higher interest rates to really start to kick in. The Fed started raising, what was it, John, 12 months, 15 months ago, 18 months ago. It takes a while for all that stuff to sort of kick in. So it almost feels like we're just, it's really the calm before the storm, as the cliche goes, from my perspective.
It could be, yeah. I mean, price growth, though, has been slowing. So I don't think, even though they're still going up, I think that rapid pace that we were seeing is kind of gone. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to depend on, like, sellers who have property owners, homeowners who are locked into 3% or lower rates, are they going to go to the market? You know what I mean? Is life going to force them into some of these changes? Is that going to make a difference? I don't really have the answers, but that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. And I want to transition to Jean for story number 4, because it's a story about buyer sentiment. But before we do, Katherine, let me just ask you, what's the reason that that you've heard that these brokerages are suddenly optimistic? Is it simply the time of year, or why were they seeing green shoots? Is it the fact that everybody's buying new construction because there's not enough product out there? Did anybody really say anything to you, or have you heard anything, whether it's for this story or other stories, as to why suddenly there's supposedly optimism in the marketplace as it pertains to supply?
I mean, I am hearing that buyers and sellers are starting to kind of bridge that gap,
Okay.
between with pricing. I think with the national brokerages that we've covered and that are publicly traded, they have cut tens of millions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars, in costs. So that's probably a big thing for them. Um, but I also think like they were maybe bracing for it to be worse than it was. And
Good point.
and I think that's part of it.
Interesting. And as we go to Jean for story number 4, let me just tell you the best way that I say you track the economy is you look at the happy hours at a restaurant or a bar. Typically, when you go in there, the happy hour will be from 3 to 6, and then as times get rough, it goes 3 to 8, then it's 3 to 10 or 3 to 9, 1 hour break, and then from 10 to close type of thing. Well, what I would tell you on the real estate side, the way you track how good the economy is doing or the brokerage is doing, simply pop into a sales office, and if they're serving you Perrier and Evian, and you have these nice little snacks from Whole Foods, they're doing okay. But if they're giving you a Dixie cup with water out of a 5-gallon jug, chances are they're not doing as well. So just pay attention to little things is what I would suggest based on my experience in the industry. Sean, let's go to you with story number 4. And this is a perfect segue from what Katherine was just discussing. It's coming out of CNBC headline. And then first, I'll read you the key points that CNBC points out. Headline: Homebuilders sentiment drops sharply as mortgage rates surge over 7%. And here's the key points that CNBC outlines. Builder sentiment dropped 6 points to 50 in August, according to the National Association of Home Builders Wells Fargo Housing Survey Index. Anything over 50 is considered positive. Mortgage rates are now holding solidly over 7%, hitting 7.24% on Monday, according to Mortgage News Daily. The share of builders cutting prices rose to 25% in August from 22% in July. John, Katherine was talking about how these brokerages, publicly traded brokerages, are suddenly optimistic. And now the home builder sentiment is sort of suggesting a little bit of a different thing. What do you make of the story? What do you make of the outlook going forward?
Well, obviously rising interest rates is slowing the market, no doubt about it. But I have to say, home builders hate to cut prices. So they'll do anything except cut prices. So they'll give you like free upgrades. They'll help pay for the new pool, and et cetera, before they will cut prices, because basically that is a signal to all future customers that they're going to get a price break. So they never want to do that. Another way that they give you a deal is by lowering your interest rates. They call it buying down your mortgage rates. And so what they do is instead of cutting prices, they'll just help you get the financing and help absorb some of those finance charges. The financing, maybe they'll give you a special rate. And a lot of the large home builders, of course, can do that because they have access to capital to basically pay for that. So instead of lowering prices, they just buy your mortgage rate down a little bit. So as mortgage rates keep going up and up and up, I mean, the 10-year treasury on which a lot of mortgages are based is shooting up right now. It's like 4.22 today. It's the highest in a year. And a lot of mortgage rates are based on that. It looks like that's going to be a lot more expensive for them to do. So they're going to have to start cutting prices. The other thing too is, I mean, if you're a seller, and you financed your purchase at 2 or 3%, and now you want to sell your home because you want to move into a bigger home, you're going to have a significantly higher cost of financing your new home. So, it may be that new home building is slowing. It hasn't slowed because, quite frankly, there's been a very limited supply of resale homes on the market. So home builders have benefited from that. But I think, as Katherine sort of alluded to, we may start seeing more listings, more resale listings at lower prices. And of course, that's going to affect the market overall. So I'm kind of not surprised that home building sentiment is down a little bit. And of course, the spring selling season's over. Florida, we're definitely in the doldrums, real estate doldrums in Florida. August, September, October, some of the slowest months. And now I was just looking up mortgage rates in Florida. I mean, we're definitely across the 8% threshold. I mean, we're firmly in the 8% range, or very close to it. So, I mean, that can't be helping.
Wow. Thanks for the optimistic outlook, John. What I was going to suggest is maybe some of these developers, as part of the incentives are offering to buyers, these home builders, maybe they can offer a BAPE, the Japanese fashion brand that's signed on with Inner Miami. Maybe they can offer some T-shirts, because if you look at the price tag on some of this Inner Miami BAPE gear, we're talking big numbers, definitely big numbers. So that's something to keep in mind. Any of you home builders out there, especially like somebody like Lennar or anybody's operating in the state of Florida, especially in South Florida. So story number 5, let's go on to John Fakler. Mr. Fakler, we're going to go to you with this story. This is a story that I selected. A bunch of different publications wrote about it throughout the United States as well as the world. I went with this story. It's actually a magazine coming out of India, because I thought they had a pretty interesting perspective. The name of the publication is called Outlook. It is a weekly news magazine coming out of India. It's called Outlook. Let me read the headline, first couple graphs, and then I will ask you to provide some comment. Headline: Billionaire Bunker, Miami's most exclusive island. Nestled discreetly within the picturesque landscape of Florida lies a tiny secret island full of billionaires. Here's all about Miami's most exclusive islands, Billionaire Bunker. And first couple graphs from Mr. Fakler. Did you know a little secret island is hidden subtly among Florida's stunning landscapes and is home to a very small group of wealthy individuals who reside there? Indian Creek, a small exclusive island in Miami with only a limited number of homes, is also known as Billionaire's Bunker, due to its residents' extraordinary wealth and notoriety. Billionaire businessman Carl Icahn, supermodel Adriana Lima, Spanish musician Julio Iglesias, American footballer Tom Brady, and Donald Trump's daughter Ivanka Trump are all just a few of the notable residents. The latest entry at the list is Amazon's founder, Jeff Bezos, who recently bought a $68 million mansion in the area. Indian Creek, the 300-acre private island in Biscayne Bay, is recognized not just for its stunning beauty, but also for being one of the Miami Beach's wealthiest, most securely segregated neighborhood on a global scale. Mr. Fakler, why don't you give us your take on the fact that Jeff Bezos, who has basically stepped away from Amazon quite a bit, he has roots down here in Miami, spent a number of years here, might have even been born here. I think he's up in North Miami or so, but he's just dropped down big money to buy one of these mansions in Indian Creek. What do you make of that? What do you make of the fact that a news magazine out of India is actually talking about this tiny secret island called Indian Creek? What's your take, Mr. Fakler?
Well, I think a lot of the fascination has to do with we're starting to see more of these enclaves for rich people, where they're parking their money in real estate. And I think that's a fascinating international story. Personally, it's not my demographic. I tend to stay away from enclaves, having some bad situations that have happened to me in the past. I won't go into too much detail. But a lot of these enclaves have, like the island, have their own police departments. They have their own marine police patrols as well. I got caught once commuting back in the day when I commuted from Boca to Miami.
Boca Raton, which is in Palm Beach County, for
yes.
The audience members who maybe aren't familiar with South Florida.
Correct. And, I made the mistake of driving through one of these very wealthy enclaves where the homes are I think it's about $25 million a piece. Again, they have their own patrol.
And for what it's worth, Mr. Fakler, if I can interrupt, Eric Clapton, the musician, actually recorded a album at one of these homes, and the album is named after the home. Now, some of the music critics out there or some of the music trivia experts are going to wonder what it is. And I think it's 501 Ocean or so. I have to get back to it. I will put it in the description of the podcast. But
that's
go ahead.
interesting.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Fakler.
Yeah. So this was, I guess, an enclave called Surfside Beach, which, by the way, is north of the Surfside where we had that condo collapse. Wasn't too far from there. Where there's
Mr. Fakler, I think you're talking about Golden Beach, not Surfside Beach.
I'm sorry, Golden Beach. Yes. Thank you for correcting me.
Okay.
So I got pulled over in Golden Beach, a very similar enclave with their own police department. I was very cognizant of the speed limit. I drove very slowly. It was dark. It was at night. I get pulled over. Cop comes over. He goes, "You know why I pulled you over?" I said, No, please inform me. He goes, "Your license plate bulb was out. This is why I got pulled over, not because I was speeding or anything." And he took a long time. He's looking for, he's walking around with the flashlight, looking for, I don't know what he was looking for. It took forever to run my number, my plate. Eventually, I got out of it and I left, but I forgot about the ticket and didn't pay it. I wound up getting my license suspended, all because of a license plate bulb. And I got reinstated, of course, once I paid the ticket. But I mean, just goes to show you, be careful of these wealthy enclaves.
Mr. Fakler, if I can, I would suggest maybe you get one of these BAPE fashion designed inner Miami shirts that's going for a pretty hefty figure. Maybe if you had one of those on, if the police officer actually pulled you over, they would have gave you a pass if they thought that you were, of the right economic demographic.
That's a great point. Or a celebrity, because I wished at that time that, if I was a celebrity, I probably would have got off.
You should have told them you were on the Miami Reporters Roundtable podcast. Anybody wants to send a comment, you can send it at Miami RRP at Miami RRP.
Great point.
Now, I will show you that my memory isn't that bad. I said Eric Clapton's record back in the day that was actually recorded in Golden Beach. I said 501 Ocean. I was a little bit off. It was called 461 Ocean Boulevard. So
is that Golden Beach?
Golden Beach. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Golden Beach. See, so even our colleagues learned something on this podcast.
Well, I was driving a ratty, beat up Sonata at the time. They weren't going to mistake me as a celebrity.
Yeah, you were a little bit of a dodgy looking individual. Katherine, you actually wrote about Jeff Bezos doing a deal to purchase in Indian Creek. Were you able to find out anything, or is there anything you could sort of share with the audience?
So there was a strong rumor that it was not him and that it was actually one of the neighbors adjacent to the property, which obviously turned out to not be true. But he is I'm 99% sure will knock that home down. So $68 million for dirt.
Tear down.
Yeah.
Nice. The $68 million tear down.
Right. But I will say, and which, by the way, was a record for Indian Creek, I think. I will say it's interesting because it's just it just shows kind of like how the 1% is just getting wealthier and wealthier and doesn't really matter to them what they spend. So, I mean, within reason. So I think that that divide between what you used to be able to buy a waterfront home on the Venetian Islands for is now just completely out of reach for your normal millionaire, So
and I will say at one point, Don Shula, the Hall of Fame coach for the Miami Dolphins, the late Don Shula, he had a home there as well as if you want to go back in the day, there was a banker out of Miami who got taken down with federal crimes related to banking, who also had a property in this island. So this is a very distinct property. Memory serves me correct. It's only somewhere in the ballpark, Katherine. Correct me if I'm wrong. Less than 50 lots make up this entire island and this entire village. And then there's a golf course in the middle, correct?
So yeah, it's something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So story number 6, we're going to go to you, Katherine. We're going to stick with you. This is another story you wrote. It ran in The Real Deal. I'll read the headline, first couple of graphs, and then I'll ask you to comment. And then If Jean or Mr. Fakler want to chime in, it'd be perfect. Here we go. Headline: South Florida's condo buyout bonanza. Deals are falling apart, stalling, or resulting in messy legal fights. I do expert witness work, so I love to hear this. So here we go. First couple graphs. Offers suddenly appeared under the doors of units at an oceanfront Miami Beach condo building one sweltering day in July, adding an unexpected twist to the drawn-out bulk buyout of the property. Mass Capital CEO Camilo Miguel Jr. was already in contract to purchase the majority of the units at the Ameth 120-unit building that was constructed almost 60 years ago. But after negotiating with sellers for more than 2.5 years and repeatedly extending the closing date for many, Miguel lost trust among sellers. Enter David Martin, CEO of Terra, one of the largest development firms in Miami. A Terra affiliate sent unsolicited offers to unit owners days after the Real Deal reported on the fallout. Developers are attempting more condo buyouts and terminations across South Florida, from Brickell and Miami Beach up to Fort Lauderdale and West Palm Beach. But lately, deals are falling apart, put on hold, or resulting in messy legal fights. Katherine, Champlain Towers South collapsed. State of Florida, the legislature passed some laws no longer allowing condo associations to kick the can down the road and simply defer doing the necessary maintenance. Also making associations have to put money in reserve. This, as a result, is jacking up the maintenance fees of a lot of these buildings. Insurance is very expensive now if you can actually achieve it. And there's this fact that a lot of people want to come here and want to purchase. And, the talk used to be that this is the last oceanfront land. This is the last waterfront land. The reality is you can simply terminate one of these condominiums by buying out all the unit owners, then knock down the building and build up something brand new. So could you walk us through kind of what you figured out in writing out the story? And also to give us a real perspective as to what's Champlain Towers South collapse? What impact it might be having on this? Or is this simply a greed play where unit owners don't want to pay their maintenance fees, don't want to pay for special assessments, and they know they can cash in right now because of this this exorbitant demand and appetite?
Yeah, I think that the thing that's kind of having the biggest impact on owners in these older buildings, like you said, is insurance. And that's, the collapse obviously had a huge effect on like insurance rates. And then the legislation just makes it so much more expensive to live in these buildings because you have to maintain them, and maintaining them, even to do whatever concrete restoration today is much more expensive than it was, before the pandemic because of construction costs. So it's like all of these things are happening at once. And a lot of owners, they can't afford it. They don't really understand it. And so you also have developers coming in and taking advantage of that. And, they may or may not be employing shady tactics to kind of get in there. But one thing I will say, too, is that at the building that I highlighted at the Amethyst, the developer, Mass Capital, through real estate agents, was, I'll say allegedly just to be safe, using the threat of, the safety, the idea that this building is not safe before the collapse to get in on that building. And once the building collapsed, these agents were again repeating that rhetoric of, look what happened. This is going to happen to you. You have to sell to me. So I think it's a lot of things happening at once, but with what's going on in the financial markets, these deals are not necessarily going to go through right now, So it's kind of like then the owners who are in these buildings are on the hook to maintain the buildings regardless.
That's right. And what I will mention is, a building that is old, let's say built before 2000 something, 2000, a lot of the changes that occurred after Hurricane Andrew back in 1992 started to kick in. So some of these older buildings, now, if they're in a waterfront location, they're going to be sought after, and a developer will say, okay, let me terminate it, knock it down and build something new. Katherine, what happens to the buildings that are located in, the middle of, for lack of a better term, nowhere, some regular community? What developer is going to want to take out these condos? And if it's an old building, how are these unit owners going to be able to pay for and afford all the necessary work and as well as the reserves? Anybody discuss that? I mean, the good location buildings, I can see I can see what happens there. What about the not so good located old buildings? Yeah. Have you got any insight on that?
Yeah, I think across the state, there have been condo to multifamily conversions. So a developer will go in, they'll probably pay much less than you would get on a waterfront property, but they'll go in and they'll buy out the owners and they'll just convert it to apartments. They can afford to do the maintenance. It just becomes a multifamily building. But in other cases, I see associations foreclosing on units because the owners can't keep up with their maintenance. Um, I think that prices, they just won't get much back they won't get a lot for their investment. Basically, that's kind of what I think will happen. And they'll become really good opportunities for developers who maybe before would have been like, it's not a waterfront property. Why would I want that?
Great point. Great point. Jean or Mr. Fakler,
Yeah.
anybody want to comment? Mr. Fakler, I know you lived in some buildings that probably
Yeah.
were termination
Well,
ready.
you just answered. You just said that was my question. Do you see an increase in condo terminations coming down the pipe currently or in the future? Don't know. I remember hearing about condo terminations way back in the day during the foreclosure crisis, but I don't hear much about condo terminations now. It almost seems like it would be, obviously, with what's going on with the increase in construction costs or the increase of cement and everything else they need to do refurbishings, that a lot of these places are going to go terminal.
Yeah, I think a lot of developers are going to have a real challenge, especially with financing costs now, with the cost of capital having doubled basically in the last year or two.
Yeah.
I mean, who's going to finance these projects?
Yep.
Cost of construction and all of that, but certainly the financing costs can be so they're not going to be able to make the kinds of offers that people are holding out for in these older buildings. And obviously I don't know what commercial bank would, take a risk like that right now too, because I mean, to tear down a building and build something new, I mean, you're not looking at delivering these buildings for another 2 to 3 years. And I mean, depending on your perspective, but it seems like the market's peaked already. And, there's going to be a down cycle. So do you really want to be stuck trying to sell yet more condos, in this environment? Really pretty risky, I think.
John, that's a great point. I guess we'll just have to wait and see how it all goes down. But I want to thank you all for participating in the podcast. I want to thank John Gruss. John was a journalist for over 25 years. Right now, he does public relations and marketing. He has his own company called Gruss Communication. You can get him on Twitter at John Gruss, JeanGruss. You can also go to his website where if you can get in contact with him, it's GRUSSPR.com. That's GrussPR.com. So if you have any public relations or marketing needs, go ahead and reach out to John. Also want to thank Katherine Kallergis. She's a residential bureau chief for The Real Deal. Been a journalist for a decade, is writing some great stories, and we were happy to have her on the podcast. You're one of our regulars, Katherine. It's season 4. You're still standing. Love to hear that. Anybody wants to get a hold of you, they can get you on Twitter at Kallergis. Kallergis. That's Kallergis. I get it right, Katherine?
Got it. Yeah.
I got it right. And I want to thank John Fakler. John was a journalist for over 20 years. Right now, it is public relations and marketing. You can get a hold of John on Twitter at JT Fakler, Fakler. And I'm Peter Zalewski of Condo Vultures. Let me remind you, if you want to check out any of our merch, again, we're getting modern. You can check out our merch. Go to condovultures.creator-spring.com, condovultures.creator, CREATOR, hyphen, the dash in the middle, spring, like I can't wait for spring.com. And if you want to send us any comments, you like what we're doing, you dislike what we're doing, go ahead and send us a message on Twitter, on TikTok, or on Instagram at Miami RRP, which stands for Miami Reporters Roundtable Podcast. So until next time, take care of yourself and we'll catch up soon. Take care. Ciao, ciao.
It's a simple formula and it works. Buy low, sell high. We're Condo Vultures, and when it comes to your real estate, we help you buy low. At Condo Vultures, we represent the buyer, and now's the time to buy. Log on to condovultures.com for more information. Condovultures.com. And remember, before you sell high, you have to buy low. Featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, 60 Minutes, and Time Magazine. Condo Vultures Realty, a licensed Florida real estate brokerage capitalizing on the condo correction since 2006.
This is Peter Zalewski of the Condo Vultures podcast. Before I started doing these podcasts, I was in the business of being a licensed real estate broker, a contributing columnist for the Miami Herald, as well as the Miami Real Deal. but also extra witness work and consulting. So if you are looking for an expert witness, or if you're looking for consulting services, a straight talk perspective as to what's going on in a particular marketplace, a building, or what happened previously, for whatever your situation is, whether you are an attorney, whether you are a institutional fund looking to invest, or whether you're a lender who's trying to come up with some sort of a strategy and approach for your lending committee going forward, I just might be able to help you. To get a hold of me, please reach out to peter@condovultures.com. That's peter@condovultures.com, or give me a call to the office at 305-865-5859, 305-865-5859.